Joining us now from New York is Garry Pierre-Pierre. He's the founder and publisher of the Haitian Times. Here with us in the studio is Sally Yearwood. She's the executive director of the Caribbean Central American Action. From Virginia, we're joined by Robert Fatton. He's a professor of government and foreign affairs at the University of Virginia. And Jake Johnston is a research associate with the Center for Economic and Policy Research right here in Washington, D.C. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Garry, let me start with you. President Moise comes to office at a time when the country is deeply divided, struggling economically, and of course, given the fact that it's gone through a political crisis, expectations are very low. But what do you think are the president's priorities for the Haitian people?
Well, his first priority is to really rally the country around him. As you mentioned, he's not a very popular figure. The elections were deeply boycotted by Haitians across the political spectrum. So he has to establish some sort of legitimacy. I heard him yesterday talk about his mandate. I think if he's talking about mandate, he's heading in the wrong direction. Because right now, he doesn't have much of a mandate, but he definitely has a lot of challenges ahead of him.
Robert, you've said that President Moise's task of getting Haiti back on its feet is Herculean. And of course, we can add to that the fact that international assistance for the small country is on the decline. And as Garry says, his mandate is weak. Election turnout was very low, but he does have majority in Parliament. And that led you to believe that he has a window of opportunity. So no matter how weak that mandate, how does he use it?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see who is going to pick for a prime minister and how his majority in Parliament will react. On the other hand, the very fact that I think the country is literally exhausted politically, that may give him some room for maneuver, and therefore maybe if he has a good agenda, he may start to implement it. So given that expectations are very low, we can probably expect in the immediate future some stability. If he does not take advantage of that moment, I think he will be in deep trouble.
So, Sally, here we have a new president, who faces some formidable challenges. Let's take a listen to what he has to say about what his priorities are. Let's watch.
Together, we are going to carry out the national project to develop the country. As you all know, agriculture is my priority. You all know this. I have just said it. Agriculture needs to be modernized so as to give work to youth, women, and men from the country.
So you have a country with economic stagnation, high unemployment. What does President Moise bring to the job?
Well, as he mentioned in his inaugural address, agriculture is going to be a priority, but I think there are a number of challenges in the agricultural sector which it's going to take a little bit longer to reform that sector and get the necessary investment. In the interim, we have to look at other opportunities for job creation, for education that can lead to future jobs. And I think in terms of the manufacturing sector, tourism, construction, those are going to be key sectors that he will need to address. Energy is going to be central to a lot of this. And so whether he has the political will to push through some of the changes that need to take place within the energy sector, within the government bureaucracy, to make the investments that are necessary to put people back to work, that will be key to him moving the economy forward in the short term.
All right, when you talk about agriculture, what is Haiti's potential? What does it grow? What does it export?
Well, mangoes, it's very well known for mangoes. There's coffee, there is, there used to be a huge sisal industry. They have bananas. He was brought in as the banana man. So there are a lot of fruits, winter vegetables, and other things that they can grow. But again, land tenure is a huge issue. So how do you break the agricultural sector into a place where it can start to get the necessary scale for investment that will enable them to put the pieces in place to make the sector stronger?
Right, and you mentioned bureaucracy. The country's public institutions will need a lot of work, wouldn't they?
Yes, bureaucratic inertia is very predominant.
Right. Jake, the new president comes to office also with a bit of a cloud hanging over his head. He's being investigated on these money laundering allegations, issues about loans that he received. He says his business dealings have been above board, but How will this affect these investigations? How will they affect his time in office?
Yeah, well, it's certainly a huge cloud over his head to begin his mandate, right? And I think there was some expectation that this might be cleared away before his inauguration yesterday, and that obviously didn't happen. And so that will continue to hang there. But it's not just that. There was the arrest and extradition on drug trafficking charges of a close ally of his to the United States recently. And then throughout Parliament, you've had an electoral process that's been tainted by fraud and irregularities, and that has produced quite a number of figures who do have other, serious concerns around their human rights abuses and their past with corruption that do populate the current Parliament. So it's not just Jovenel Moise, the president, but it's also what's around him. And I think as we move forward, it's going to be, one clear thing to watch is how he can sort of navigate the people that brought him to power and that helped him get to power, and the needs of the country moving forward.
Gary, President Moise draws a lot of parallels between himself and the new U.S. President, Donald Trump. He says they're both entrepreneurs, they're both businessmen, and entrepreneurs get results. But, can he really apply those free market principles to Haiti? It's a country where poverty is endemic, where the agricultural sector, as we've just been talking about, is very stagnant. And as you pointed out, apathy is widespread as well.
Certainly, and that's, I think, overreach comparing himself with Donald Trump. But I think what President Moise should concentrate on instead of agriculture is infrastructure building. Because what happens is, because of the lack of infrastructure, whatever economic development route that you want to take, any president ultimately faces the reality that it doesn't go anywhere because the country lacks road, electricity, just about everything you need for any sector to develop properly. So I would suggest that this president and future presidents really concentrate on getting infrastructures on the ground, and then later on decide which economic opportunities Haiti can take advantage of at that time. But we certainly need to go back to the drawing board. We keep making the same mistakes. Martelly, for instance, his predecessor, was obsessed with tourism, spent a lot of money on projects that didn't go very far right now. And then, unfortunately, some of his investments were wiped out in the South during Hurricane Matthews. And we really have to shore up the environment that's creating a catastrophe out of regular rain, let alone a major hurricane. So really, any president who really wants to move Haiti forward needs to concentrate on infrastructure development.
Jake, what do you think are the president's priorities? As Gary points out there, does he put money into agricultural development, or does he put money into infrastructure development? Does he do both? Does he try to do it all?
Yeah, well, I think, to start with, the question is, where's the money going to come from? And his predecessor was the benefit of a tremendous amount of money coming from Venezuela through the Petro-Caribe program, as well as the post-earthquake assistance that came from the international community to sort of drive things forward. And the question now is, where do those resources come from? And so there are tremendous amount of needs, and he's pledged to do so much in terms of agriculture, infrastructure, creating jobs. And the real question now is, where do those resources come from? And I think when you look at the relationship with the international community, and this is one thing he has pledged to do, and I think will be key in terms of driving any of these issues, is working more in lockstep with those partners and having that money come through a centralized plan, through a government priorities, and really going towards the government's priorities as opposed to working around them, which so frequently is what foreign aid has actually done in the past.
Right, Robert, what are your thoughts on international aid? As we pointed out, international aid is dropping. How does Haiti lessen its dependence on international aid and still make some kind of development progress?
Well, it's very clear that Haiti is in deep economic crisis. I'm not sure that foreign assistance in terms of what it has accomplished over the years is such a great thing. Nonetheless, we need investments, we need some foreign assistance, and apparently the Inter-American Bank has about $1 billion to disburse to Haiti in the next 5 years. The question is whether the government of Haiti can have a program that is actually corresponding to the priorities of the World Bank, of the international financial institutions. And this is a question mark, because the international institutions are very clear about their ideological preferences, and those have been in evidence for the past 40 years in Haiti, and we have very little to show for. And I'm not sure even if President Moise would want to really change the policies, that he would have the capacity to do so. Now, on the question of agriculture, I think investments in agriculture are critical, but the question is, what kind of agriculture? Is it going to be agribusiness? Is it going to be small peasants? And that's really the fundamental issue. There is no necessary contradiction between investments in infrastructure in agriculture, because if you are going to develop agriculture, you're going to have to need electricity, roads, etc., and irrigation. So that means that investment in agriculture are also investments in the infrastructure. The question is whether the programs are going to change, whether the export-oriented model is going to change. And that is not clear at all, even if there is a willingness on the part of the government, given the structural constraints of the international environment.
Robert, I think that's a very good point you've made, but remember that Préval in his first term also invested heavily in agriculture, in the Artibonite Valley particularly, and those investments were washed away by a major storm that hit Gonaïves several years ago. And so, yes, you do have to prioritize, because Haiti doesn't have the money to do both. It's a nagging challenge. Infrastructure work is not sexy. It's not something that you'll remember with everybody wants to do something to leave a mark. That's true, but I do think that, you know, if they were try to invest in infrastructure development, you would create jobs, much needed jobs. It's no different from what we are talking about in the United States right now. Infrastructure is a major job creation, and from there, you can decide what's best, be it tourism, be it agro-industry, or industry in general.
All right. Sally, one other issue that Haiti faces, it's faced a prolonged political crisis. Can we say with any degree of confidence right now that that political crisis has come to an end, the president can get on with the job of getting the country back on its feet?
No.
It's going to continue.
I mean, I think Garry made the point earlier about the fact that there are a number of things that are playing against the ability for the new president to establish a political base that can really be sure that it's controlling in a even-handed way the landscape. But I think that if he does what he said he was going to do, I mean, yesterday his inauguration speech touched on the fact that he wants, you know, as every incoming president has said since time immemorial, we want to work with our opponents, we want to work with the people who voted with us, and we want to work with the people who didn't vote at all. If he does have a honeymoon, if he does have a chance to put some of these pieces in place that gives people some confidence, I think there will be an ability to go somewhere. But Haiti is an inherently political country. The ability to lead and the ability to govern is always going to be fraught with people who want to take it away from you. So to that point, I think he has a mandate, but it's going to be touch and go for a while.